People keep asking how a company that once looked untouchable could unravel so fast, and every time the conversation comes up, one thing keeps circling back like an unanswered text message: the misunderstanding between Tommy and Cami. On the surface, M-Tex's downfall looks like the usual mix of bad timing, market pressure, and a few questionable decisions. But when you start pulling at the threads, it becomes clear that the real damage didn't start with the market or the competitors. It started in a room where two people who once trusted each other stopped listening. Tommy and Cami were the heartbeat of M-Tex. Not just executives on a chart, but the kind of partnership people pointed to and said, "That's why this company works." Tommy was the big-picture guy, obsessed with growth, expansion, and pushing M-Tex beyond its comfort zone. Cami, on the other hand, was the stabilizer. She understood the systems, the people, and the risks that didn't show up on spreadsheets. When they were aligned, M-Tex moved fast but smart. When they weren't, the company didn't just slow down. It started drifting. The problem wasn't one explosive argument or a dramatic betrayal. That's the thing people miss. The misunderstanding crept in quietly. It started with assumptions. Tommy assumed Cami didn't believe in the future he was trying to build. Cami assumed Tommy no longer valued the foundation she had spent years strengthening. Neither of them sat down and said those words out loud. Instead, they let silence do the talking, and silence is rarely neutral. One key moment everyone talks about is the expansion proposal. Tommy pushed hard for it, framing it as a now-or-never opportunity. From his perspective, hesitation meant fear. From Cami's perspective, caution meant responsibility. She wasn't saying no, but Tommy heard, "I don't trust you." That single misinterpretation changed how he approached her from that point on. Meetings became more formal. Conversations became shorter. Decisions started happening without the usual back and forth that once defined their leadership. Cami felt it too, even if she couldn't immediately name it. Suddenly, she was looped in late. Plans were already half approved before she saw them. To her, it felt like being sidelined, like the company she helped build was slowly being taken out of her hands. She interpreted Tommy's behavior as arrogance or, worse, a deliberate attempt to push her out. Instead of confronting him directly, she pulled back, choosing to protect her team and her department rather than fight a battle she wasn't sure she could win. That's where the real damage started to spread. Teams noticed the shift long before the numbers did. Mixed signals came down the chain. One department would hear one priority from Tommy, while another would hear a slightly different message from Cami. Employees didn't know whose direction to follow, and uncertainty is poison in any organization. People stopped taking initiative because they didn't want to back the wrong vision. Momentum slowed, then stalled. Externally, M-Tex still looked fine for a while. Revenue didn't crash overnight. Partnerships stayed intact. But internally, cracks were forming everywhere. Projects dragged on longer than they should have. Small issues turned into major delays because no one wanted to escalate problems that might expose the leadership divide. By the time competitors started sensing weakness, the company was already exhausted from fighting itself. What makes the Tommy and Cami situation especially tragic is that their goals weren't actually that different. Tommy wanted M-Tex to grow and dominate. Cami wanted it to survive and remain sustainable. Those two things aren't opposites, but the misunderstanding made them feel like they were. Instead of seeing each other as balance, they started seeing each other as obstacles. And once that mindset sets in, every action gets filtered through suspicion. There were chances to fix it. Insiders have hinted at moments where a single honest conversation could have changed everything. A late-night meeting. A postponed board review. A crisis that forced temporary cooperation. Each time, they worked together just enough to get past the immediate problem, but never enough to address the underlying tension. They treated symptoms and ignored the disease. When the real downturn hit, supply issues, rising costs, aggressive competitors, M-Tex didn't have the unified leadership it needed to respond. Decisions that should have taken days took weeks. Strategies were revised halfway through execution. Confidence, both inside and outside the company, evaporated. Investors don't just watch numbers, they watch people. And what they saw was a leadership team that no longer moved as one. In the end, it wasn't just a misunderstanding between two individuals. It was a breakdown in communication that echoed through the entire organization. Tommy thought he was protecting the future by pushing forward. Cami thought she was protecting the company by slowing things down. Neither realized that without trust, neither approach could succeed. M-Tex didn't fall because one of them was wrong. It fell because they stopped trying to understand each other. That's the uncomfortable lesson here. Companies don't always collapse because of bad products or weak markets. Sometimes they collapse because the people at the top stop having real conversations. The story of Tommy and Cami isn't just about M-Tex. It's a reminder that leadership isn't only about vision or control. It's about clarity, empathy, and the courage to clear up misunderstandings before they harden into divisions. By the time M-Tex realized that, the damage was already done.